Hello and welcome to Pirate Reviews, the Pirate Review channel. My name is Shadowbane, and today I will be reviewing Grey Goo for the PC. Grey Goo is a real-time strategy game that combines classic strategy mechanics and a balanced combat system with an emphasis on large-scale decision-making. It puts you at the center of a tactical struggle for survival and ultimately control of Ecosystem 9. In Grey Goo, you take command of one of three unique factions. The humans, who are masters of defensive architecture, the Beta, a proud, versatile race, or the Goo, an enigmatic, highly mobile life form. Fight from behind massive walls, attack from strategic outposts, or swallow your enemies whole. Just remember, the choices you make on the battlefield will mean the difference between glorious victory and agonizing defeat. I'm going to start this review by talking about the video, audio, and controls for Grey Goo. The graphics in Grey Goo are superb. Everything is clean and crisp, and what you would expect from a RTS in 2015. The audio, on the other hand, leaves something to be desired. It has good ambience, the music and voice acting is good, but it's also very annoying. The lady who gives you status updates just talks too much. On one particular map, she would tell me that a unit was complete every half a second, and it almost drove me up a wall. As for controls, standard mouse and keyboard works just fine for this RTS. I'm not sure about controller support. If you're like me, the first time you boot up Grey Goo, you're going to look for the tutorial. Well, there isn't one exactly. Instead of a straight-up tutorial, it's kind of built into the very first couple of missions. The game will explain how you do basic stuff, and for every new unit you build, you will get a little pop-up in the top right corner, a little upside-down triangle that you can click on for your encyclopedia. The encyclopedia will tell you about status update symbols, and unit strengths, weaknesses, and general information. The first thing it's going to teach you is about the terrain. In Grey Goo, you have large cliff faces. On top of these cliffs, you can shoot down at your enemies. And as long as they don't have vision, they can't shoot back. This, as you might expect, gives you a great tactical advantage against your enemies. The other main thing you need to know about terrain is cover. In the game, there will be forests and trees, and you can go into these places and actually hide from your enemies. While in cover, you can shoot out, but as long as the enemy can't see in, they can't shoot you. The only exception to this rule is scouts, who can see inside cover.
We can destroy it to make room for an extractor.
One last thing about terrain before we move on. There are plugs on resource vents. Sometimes you have to destroy them. Also, there can be rocks blocking your path through, like, a mountain valley. Those also need to be destroyed.
Beginning construction.
Next, we'll talk about base building. In Grey Goo, it really has that old Command and Conquer vibe to it. There's not an overwhelming number of buildings, but there is enough variety that your playthroughs will not get dull. This is in part due to the way they implemented base building. For the Beta race, this revolves around hubs. Once you've built a hub, you have attachment points. Each attachment point, you can put a refinery, or a silo, or a factory, or even a tech lab. Adding tech labs to factories on a hub will actually let your factories produce more powerful units. Speaking of tech buildings, you have 4 different kinds: tank, artillery, aircraft, and stealth. Each of these buildings, and combinations of buildings, unlock more powerful units. As you play the campaign, you'll go from small hubs that hold 2 buildings to medium hubs that can hold 4. Towards the end, you even get hubs that can hold 6 building attachments. One other note on large hubs. When all 5 powers combine, When all 4 tech buildings combine on a single hub, along with 2 factories, you can make that race's epic unit.
Beginning construction.
For the beta, this unit is called the Hand of Rook, and you can actually see it at the beginning of the video.
Unit
It is
ready.
the extremely
Unit
large
in
vehicle
production.
that shoots shells that are like mini nukes. For the alpha,
Unit ready.
you get a giant
Unit
robot
in
that shoots
production.
laser beams out its eyes.
Wall
And for the
under
goo,
attack.
you get a subterranean goo
Wall
that comes up underneath enemies and buildings and
Unit ready.
destroys them.
Unit in production. Gate
Next, I'll touch
under
on
attack.
defense.
Unit
You play the
under
beta
attack.
race, you get to build walls and gates, but you don't actually get any turrets.
Repairing.
Instead, you take your units, such as the commando, and actually tell them to jump on top of your wall, and they become your turret. This way, you can upgrade your turrets at any time. Simply take one unit out and put another unit in.
Understood.
Assist.
When you decide to change it up and play as humans, or goo, you'll find base building is extremely different. For one, the Grey Goo don't have a base. Their mothers simply roll around on the ground, resource pool to resource pool, feeding off of the fountains. Upon doing this, the fountain will stop for a short while. You will then move your mother goo to the next fountain, and when it's depleted, you simply move it back to the previous. The goo I found to be very difficult to play. They did not really fit my playstyle at all. You don't get a base. It's very difficult. You're moving resource patch to resource patch. You only get a little bit each time from those resource patches, and then you have to move to another. And then, you can move back to the one you were just at. There was a lot of going back and forth. I just didn't really enjoy that playstyle myself. A lot of people will. The goo units, the way they work, you actually, as you get resources, you split your mother goo into smaller goos, like proteins, and then you build units when you split again from those. Not my playstyle. I didn't really enjoy it. I found it very difficult, but it seemed well implemented nonetheless. Finally, you have humans. The humans are unique. Instead of calling down hubs like the beta, or being nomads like the goo, instead you start with one centralized location, and it isn't always centralized on the map. From this location, you have something called conduits. Conduits are a pain in the ass. You have to build them out from your base, and you can't go anywhere or build anything without them. Speaking of being a pain in the ass, there's a couple of maps where you simply can't expand your base anymore because there's a ramp on the map. Guess what? Conduits cannot be built up or down ramps. So essentially, if you have a resource pool across the map you need to get to, you're going to be sending your harvesters a long ass way. The good news about humans, though, is they get to build turrets. You really can't underestimate this because turrets don't count towards your population cap like the units do. This allows you to field a full army and yet still have a full base defense, unlike the beta who use their units as their turrets. Speaking of turrets, there's a few different kinds. You have your anti-heavy turret, basically kills your tanks, probably what you'll spam the most of. You have an artillery turret. These things have some really good range. Quite a good turret, but they don't do a terrible amount of damage. You have your anti-air turret, the staple, and then you have a detector turret. This basically can see stealth, gives you a very nice vision range around it. It's really good. You can also see up cliffs with the detector turret. I'm running out of time on this review, but there's a couple of things I'd still like to touch on. First of all, tech buildings. Every tech building type has 3 special upgrade technologies. You can choose one of these to augment your units for the rest of the game. This can really change something up, as it might allow your anti-air tank to shoot to ground targets. On top of that, you can change the selected upgrade anytime throughout the game. All in all, I found Grey Goo to be an enjoyable experience. It has all the things I come to expect to modern day RTS, such as auto build, squad system, resource management, all the good things that we're used to by now. But I also found it lacking, as there's only about 10 unit types to choose from. You have your generic tank, your artillery, your anti-infantry, your anti-tank. Not a lot of variety there. If you played something like Planetary Annihilation, where you just have tons of units, or Supreme Commander, you will miss the options a little. But even saying that, at no point did I think that the Grey Goo was a bad game.
Another trimmer.
With a solid campaign, good voice acting, and what appears to be a good balancing job on multiplayer, I think Petroglyph is definitely worth supporting with the Grey Goo. Petroglyph, as some of you might know, was actually founded in 2003 by employees of the former Westwood Studios. I was a big Command & Conquer fan back in the day, and it's good to see those guys still around making good RTSs. Now, saying that, Petroglyph is definitely worth supporting, but is the game worth $50? And the short answer is no. There's not a lot of new stuff going on here. You don't have the options like bigger games like Planetary Annihilation. It's good, but it's not $50 good. Maybe $29.99, $34.99, something like that good. It's currently $49.99 on Steam. And again, I say, it's just not worth that much. But if you go to King1 or G2A, you could actually pick it up for $29.99. That's what I'm going to do, as it is definitely worth $30. And that wraps us up today. It was Shadowbane for Grey Goo on the Pirate Reviews channel. Remember, we pirate so you don't have to. You guys have a wonderful day.
On my location.